Welcome to the TCM Teach Podcast, the business podcast designed exclusively for acupuncturists and Chinese medicine herbalists who are ready to build thriving, sustainable businesses. I'm Sabey Smith, licensed acupuncturist, herbalist, professor, entrepreneur, coach, and I've spent years helping practitioners just like you not only master their clinical skills, but also build businesses that reflect their unique voice, values, and vision. Today, we're diving into a topic that many new practitioners overlook and feel overwhelmed by: branding. So we're not just talking logos or colors, but we're actually talking more about building a brand identity that communicates who you are, what you stand for, and why patients should choose you. When you build your TCM brand, you're building something from scratch. And you need to have clarity and intention when you do that. So what you're doing is you're creating a foundation that attracts the right patients, builds trust, and sets your clinic apart as a result. So quick disclaimer, and then we'll get started. Please remember, I am simply a practitioner here to support you on your journey. The information shared on this podcast is intended for educational and learning purposes only, and it should not be taken as professional, legal, or financial advice. For guidance specific to your business, please consult with the appropriate licensed professional. Thank you. All right, so let's dive into it. Why branding matters in a healing business. We have to understand that branding is more than a logo. It's not the simple thing that you go create and be like, hey, here's my brand. There's more of an energy and identity for your practice. And we'll dive into that further. But these are some of my quick notes of what we're going to really review today. Next is patients are making decisions based on trust, resonance, and clarity. Are you clear with your messaging? Does it resonate with them? And do they feel like they can ultimately trust you? Are you confident in your messaging? And do you stick to it? Without a brand, your clinic risks blending in too much. And I see this problem a lot. So when something's blending in too much, you may not even have a strong brand. People don't know what you stand for as a clinic. But if you have a strong brand, you're going to stand out. This is why I've talked previously about having things like a specialization and a niche, because when you have that, it's more advantageous for you in the long run. You can still treat whatever you want, but it drives me crazy when I see a clinic website that talks about how they could treat everything. That's fine. You're supposed to be able to treat everything. But what is the thing that you really sink your heels into and really chase after? And who do you help the most? What's your bread and butter? And then next is, we can think of our branding like the Shen of the clinic. It's like the spirit of the clinic and the visible expression of your essence. So when we think of our clinic and we relate this to TCM, we'll think of the business like this is like the Shen. The branding is like the Shen of the business. So your brand is going to be the bridge between your healing gifts, your healing knowledge, anything you do that can help people, and the patients who need you the most. So what are the core elements of a strong brand in TCM? Your story and origin. You want this to be thought out. You don't want this to seem like you woke up one day and you said, hey, here's my brand. Yippee. What did you do to become a practitioner? Why did you become a practitioner? What is the big reason why you became a practitioner? I will try to give some examples here to try and help you. So why did you become a practitioner? Okay. For me, I was inspired to become a practitioner because I always felt like there was something in me that needed to learn medicine, needed to learn herbs. And I always felt like when I saw family members sick or something, I wanted to be able to find a solution. And then what the moment was that really hit me was when my wife got a TBI. My wife got a traumatic brain injury from a horrible skiing accident. We actually moved across the country to access better skiing, and that totally changed things because she got this really bad TBI. And I was actually a school teacher at the time. And so she went the conventional biomed route because that's all we really knew at the time. And she was given migraine medication for post-concussive syndrome. Nothing was getting better. Short-term disability for the rest of the school year. It really was not a good scenario. And things just weren't getting better. The migraine medication wasn't working. And someone suggested, hey, have you tried acupuncture? And I was like, hey, do whatever you need to do. Go for it. And she would come home and she said, they put a needle in my toe and I can see straighter. Or they gave me these pills that help my stomach digest things better. Because we both didn't know anything about acupuncture or Chinese medicine. And that really inspired me. So why did I become a practitioner? I saw something work outside of the norm. I saw something work that seemed deeper. So I got the buy-in when I had some stomach issue or sinus infection. And I remember that I got better. I got better faster. And I was like, I have no idea what just happened, but this is really cool. And I used to have a fear of needles too. And I was like, okay, well, we'll see how this goes. And ultimately, here I am with my doctorate in acupuncture and Chinese medicine. So, kind of full circle, why did I become a practitioner? Because I was the person who didn't think it worked, who saw it work firsthand and said, I need to learn this and I need to do this for people because this is something that seems to be missing in our system. More buy-in, right? That's going to create some resonance with people. Why did I end up going into sports? I saw my wife get hurt from a skiing injury. I've been a competitive strength athlete for many years. I've seen the common ailments that people get. I see them go to DOs, MDs, PTs, NDs, but there wasn't a lot of acupuncturists or herbalists who were focusing in that realm. And I was like, I want to work with these people, or chiropractors even. I want to work with these people. And I was able to create this extra angle to help. And I always had this real big drive for herbs. I felt like it connected me more to the earth, more to knowing what medicine really was. And that's what Chinese medicine gave me. So again, creating more resonance for people. So the next would be, what personal experiences shaped your approach to healing? For me, I always knew I wanted to be able to heal things naturally. I think that's common for a lot of people who have an interest in holistic health. They want to find natural approaches. I was not really exposed to that. I grew up in the Northeast in a place where biomed was what you do. So that's what I did. But simple things like headaches or stress or frustration, it was like, there's really no solution to this. Or the common cold. I used to get so many common colds and I didn't know why. And so I wanted to be able to find solutions to these common everyday things, or how to eat better, how to sleep better. I didn't know. And then I remember buying my first books on Chinese medicine before I even went to school or anything. I was just curious, like, are there herbs that can help me or something? I think a lot of people go down this path, but those personal experiences are what shaped how I communicate with people and ultimately how my brand works with other people. It's like, hey, I was you. I didn't think much of this stuff. I had an interest, but I was always taught, well, just go to the ER or urgent care, go to your yearly physical, and that's all you did for your health, and just eat healthy, right? I felt like there was more. I wanted to dive deeper. And so I like to work with the people who want to dive deeper. That's part of my brand. And then patients connect with authentic stories. So you heard several authentic stories from me growing up. I loved playing in the woods. I loved being in nature, maybe gardening, even just working in the yard, like getting my hands dirty. I thought herbs were really cool, but I didn't know anything about them. And I couldn't find information on them either on the internet or something. There wasn't a lot of quote unquote research. So I always just gravitated towards supplements. And I was like, well, who's making these supplements? Okay, well, is there a way to get more to the root of where these supplements come from? So that was part of my journey. And creating these stories, you want to be able to relate to the people you want to work with. So for me, I've been a competitive powerlifter. I've had a lot of success in the sport, and I love working with powerlifters. That's one of the populations I really like to focus on. Strength athletes, athletes in general. I've done a lot of strength and conditioning coaching throughout my life. I worked in many gyms. I understand the mental performance aspects of athletes. So on the broader spectrum, it's like I can work with any athlete. I know what it's like to be a competitive athlete. I can work with any strength athlete because I understand their common ailments. But in the greater scheme of things, anyone who's active walks through my door. And being an active person, I can automatically relate to that, especially with the activities that I do. For example, skiing, rock climbing, whatever I can get my hands on having fun with, right? So when we can be relatable in those ways and have those experiences, for example, if I have a rock climber come through the door, oh, I hit this route last week. Oh, no way, that's super cool. Yeah, but I got this tendon pull. I'm like, oh man, tendon pulls suck. Yeah, I've been there. I actually treated that a couple weeks ago. It took them about 3 weeks and then they were all better. They were out of climbing for 4 months. It's like when you have that story, boom, you can relate. And you're like, I trust you. You're the person who gets this. So that's why I encourage all practitioners. We know you can treat everything, but be specific. Where can you get the authentic experience and get the authentic stories to talk to your patients? So next is your niche and your audience. So who do you serve best? A lot of common things are what I was saying. Athletes, could be stress, children, fertility. I love working with kids. Okay. I don't advertise that I work with kids, but I can. My youngest patients were 2 years old. I have gone through what it's like to treat young children being a parent. Okay. So when you have experiences, you add it to your arsenal, but that doesn't have to be part of your brand. In the background, you're like, oh, I'd be happy to work with your kid if, say, the patient was the one who was active, the parent was the one who was active. Say, oh no, bring your kid in too. I'd be happy to work with them as well. It can be that simple. It's just an easy segue. It's what are the first people that come through the door and why? Who do you serve best first? And then it becomes a ripple effect with word of mouth. And then people start talking about you in the local area. And then your clinic starts building as a result. Another way this can happen is if you take insurance. Insurance companies will refer to you. And then if you can get a solid framework of insurance patients, maybe VA, maybe cash pay, you can get a nice flow of patients treating many different conditions. But you have to have a breakthrough first. Breakthrough, we'll call it your breakthrough style. This is something that I've heard a lot in visual arts and music arts, is like you get to know a artist from their breakthrough style, and once they become known, then they branch off and do other things as well. So think of your breakout style in this case just as an acupuncturist. And then what language do they use to describe their struggles? Is it a language that you can relate to? For example, me loving rock climbing. If I use common rock climbing terms, it automatically breaks down the wall because rock climbing has a certain terminology that goes along with it. Say, oh yeah, I was hanging out at the crag and it was totally sandbagged compared to, they said it was like a 5.9, but really it was so sandbagged, I thought it was like a 5.10 rated R. Like, not everyone would know what that means, but a rock climber would know what that means. So it breaks down that wall and it makes sense to who you are talking to. And so when you can use that specific language, and this also does not just have to be language in the sense of terminology with a sport. It could be literally, if you speak Spanish and you want to help other folks who speak Spanish, that's a great way to break down the walls, right? You can advertise that you're a Spanish speaking practice or clinic. And that's a great way to get other people in the door if you're a Spanish speaker, for example. Next is your core values. What principles guide your practice? Is it holistic care, empowerment, accessibility, community? Generally, most clinics want all of this to some extent, of course, but usually there's an overarching goal in mind where one is kind of more than the other if your mental health clinic, if you're more of like a mental health clinic, then you may have other practitioners who focus on mental health as well that are not just acupuncturists. If you're more of a holistic care clinic, you may be in a clinic, say, with a chiropractor and a naturopath. Or if you want accessibility, maybe you have a lot of community acupuncture, or you only work on insurance, or maybe you work with an MD and can also work under Medicare in some cases. It's still dicey in certain areas, but I know it's possible. And then if you're focused on community, maybe you have community events in your space or something to bring people together. Whatever suits you, there's a way to do that. So what principles guide your practice? And that really goes into your mission and your vision statements. What are your core values as a company, as a clinic, and as a practitioner? Values should show up in both messaging and they should show up in operations. This is why it's so important to write these things down ahead of time. Your messaging has to show up just as much. Your values have to show up just as much in your messaging and operations. If you say that you care a lot about holistic care, and you put out that messaging, and then your operations are everyone in your clinic is completely burned out, that doesn't look very good. If you say you care about, accessibility, but your clinic does not have handicap accessibility easily, that's not showing up in your operations, just your messaging. Make sure you can stick to your messaging and show it not just through words, but through actions. It is very important as a business because someone will call you out if you don't stick to it. And you don't want that to happen because that could end up becoming bad press. And you don't want that because ultimately you're trying to help people. Just make sure you can back up your messaging through action. Next, visual identity. Logos, colors, fonts, clinic space design. This should all reflect your practice's energy. Should be calm, vibrant, professional, and nurturing. So I really thought about this. So before I even studied medicine and science and all that, I actually got a degree in studio arts. I got a bachelor's degree in studio arts, and I was inspired after doing my Chinese medicine studies. And I actually ended up writing a book where I sold it. I still sell it as an ebook. It's called How to Design for a Healthy Mind and Body, because I really thought about this. Okay, with a clinic, what colors should be used? What types of imbalances am I working with? How do I keep a balanced space for everyone through lighting, through color, through contrast? What's calming? And then what I did was I ended up writing this book. This is just coming up organically because I'm thinking of it. I ended up writing this book because what types of imbalances is the patient working with? Because what I did in the book, I kind of taught them how to figure that out for themselves. And then what types of art should they have on the wall? What colors should be on the wall? How should the lighting look? So this is something that has gone through my mind many times, and ultimately it should go back to your messaging. What are you all about? It should reflect your practice's energy. Do you want it to be calm? Do you want it to be vibrant, professional, nurturing? Ideally, you want professional, of course. How is the shen of your business going to be reflected? Because ultimately, if you're the head honcho, okay, if you're the boss, how does it reflect you? Do you want it to reflect you? What are your values, and does that show up in your decor as well? And if you believe in community, say, maybe you support a community by the art on your walls or something, supporting local artists, for example. So keep those things in mind. Voice and messaging. How do you talk about TCM to your patients? You want to use simple, relatable language without losing authenticity. Yes, and this is a very fine line that I've worked with a lot of students on because, I literally have them practice speeches and elevator pitches about this stuff, because when you end up talking about TCM, you don't want to oversimplify it to the point it doesn't sound legitimate. And you don't want to get overly fancy to the point you sound like you only work in biomed. You have to play between the lines. So think about who you ultimately work with. If you are more of an esoteric acupuncturist, then you should use more esoteric type language. Those types of patients would want to hear more things about energy and chi flow throughout your body. They're more open to it versus performance athletes. They may not be as open to that. They would want to hear about how acupuncture stimulates electrical impulses along fascial planes and ultimately uses the brain and the spine to help fix imbalances on certain sides of the body, yada, yada, yada. So you can get really scientific, but it really depends on who you're speaking to, because ultimately all the answers come from the people who went to school to learn this the whole time. How do you sum that up very quickly for a patient? Okay, next, common branding mistakes practitioners make. Okay, copying what other clinics do instead of clarifying their own vision. Oh, don't do that. Like I said, if your website says right now that you treat everything, please change that. You can tell them when they call you, but ultimately you want to get the people you help the most through the door. Don't be afraid of losing out. If you're copying what the other person does down the street, you're ultimately watering down your own identity. Don't do that. Using overly clinical or overly spiritual branding that confuses patients, pick one and stick to it. Like I said, if you're more of an esoteric acupuncturist, you can use more of the spiritual branding. If you're more of I just use athlete because I've done that a lot. If you're more a performance athlete type acupuncturist, you should sound more clinical. Ultimately, we are all holistic. We are all focused on TCM. You just have to really think about what you are focusing on. Okay? Who are you trying to work on the most? The next thing, don't change your branding frequently. Ideally, you wrote a really good business plan where you know exactly where you're headed, so you don't have to change your branding. The inconsistencies are what erode the trust. People stop taking you seriously. Oh, they're taking this direction. Oh, they're taking this direction. Trust me, I have done that, and I learned the hard way. It erodes trust. Don't do it. As soon as you start sticking to your brand and sticking to your values and having a plan, the whole world opens up and everything becomes easier. Okay? Sometimes it can also be helpful that separating your business branding identity does not just have to be your identity. Sometimes the two feel like they have to go hand in hand. Trust me, I was guilty of that when I was a younger practitioner too. It doesn't have to. There is a separation between you and your business. Ultimately, make sure you're sticking to the core values of your business in case of branding. Don't focus only on visuals, just the logo, the colors. You really have to nurture the story and the values. I can't stress enough the importance of core values. Make sure you stick to that. Okay, so like I said, in TCM, we can think of Shen like the spirit that shines through the eyes of the business. Because in TCM, Shen ultimately shows up through the eyes of a person. So what we're doing is we're trying to reflect the inner vitality of the business. How does the business show up in the world, and how do other people see that through the eyes of the business? Your brand is like your business's Shen, the way your spirit shines outward and connects with others. A brand built on authenticity is going to lead to patients feeling your integrity and your commitment. And branding is not about ego. It's about resonance and alignment. Practical steps to build your brand from scratch. Okay, I'm going to lay out 6 things for you right here. So listen up. Write your own origin story. Why you chose TCM and what drives you. 2, define your ideal patient profile. Who you help best and what their needs are. And we've talked about this previously, but I'm bringing it up yet again because it's so important. 3, list your top 3 values and commit to showing them in your business. Remember, they have to be shown up through your words and your actions, aka your operations. If you have to, write standard operating procedures on those. 4, choose a simple, consistent visual identity. 1 logo, 2 to 3 colors, 1 to 2 fonts. That's it. Don't overly complicate the logo. Don't make small, fine lines. Make it simple and to the point, because the reason that's important is if you want to put it on a shirt or some type of apparel, or it has to be able to be seen from far away. This is where colors come in. This is where fonts come in. And the logo is really important. Just keep it simple. 5, craft a clear elevator pitch. 1 or 2 sentences explaining what you do and who you help. Usually what I do with students is I have them start with, say, 3 minutes. Okay, get it down in 3 minutes. And a lot of them struggle with 3 minutes. Okay, now get it down to a minute. Now get it down to 30 seconds. How long is an actual elevator ride? If you can get it done in an elevator ride, it might start as if the elevator ride is all the way on a skyscraper. How can it be 3 floors? Get your elevator pitch down as if the ride is only 3 floors long. Audit your online presence. Does it align with your values and your story? Yes or no? If not, how do you fix it? So ultimately, what is the effect of a strong brand? Patients feel clarity. They know they're in the right place. You attract patients who resonate with your mission. Remember those core values? Your mission should be based on that. And better clinical outcomes are a result. And then you start getting more referrals too. Your confidence is going to grow as your outer brand matches your inner vision. So your core values, once again. And a strong brand is going to build longevity. So your practice becomes known and trusted in the community. And there's some really great books out there on branding as well. And I'm going to bring up some more things to continue on this path to help you. There is a really cool book I wanted to mention I'm looking it up right now because I'm thinking of it off the top of my head. It's written by Deb Gabor, Deb, Gabor. And the book is called Irrational Loyalty. And I really like this book. It's very simple, straightforward, and it talks about building a brand. And Deb Gabor is someone who I believe it's a branding marketing firm or something that was very successful and brings up a lot of great stories about branding and why it's so important. And the book Irrational Loyalty is a really good one that I recommend you read if you really want to focus on branding. So I want to leave you with this. Building your TCM brand from scratch, it's not about making it flashy. It's about being clear, having resonance with whoever you're trying to speak to, and being authentic. Just like a TCM, when Shen is clear and bright, the whole system thrives. Your brand is the Shen of your business. So what I've done is I've created a resource called the Brand Clarity Blueprint, and you will find that in the membership. So that's going to walk you through the essential steps of clarifying your story, audience, values, and visual identity so you can start building your TCM brand a little further and hopefully a little simpler. So in our next episode, we're going to be diving into storytelling for acupuncturists, how to explain what you do. So until then, thanks for tuning into the TCM Teach Podcast, and we'll see you next time. 谢谢。